Help Save Our World Speak number 57, Beyond the Age of Ignorance, the Transition Back to the Garden. Hello and welcome to our 57th Help Save Our World Speak online speakers meeting, where we are changing the conversation to change our world. I'm Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth and movement from thinking, questioning, reasoning, choosing, changing, transforming, to transitioning to a sustainable age of reason beyond this age of ignorance. These meetings are designed to help save our world by empowering you with the knowledge, skills, and wisdom you need to think and choose for yourself, so you can heal yourself, and so you can empower others to heal themselves. So together, we can create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future for all life on planet Earth. Let's start with introductions. Seeing as you are up there and on the top, Kurt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Kurt from South Florida these days, and I attend these sessions because I think they're valuable for our small group of people to continue to refine what we're up to in helping change the minds on the planet and helping the cause of civilization on the planet find balance with nature.
Excellent. That's wonderful, Kurt. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Alex from South Africa, and I'm here to help people create a healthy and sustainable future for everyone.
Excellent. Brendan?
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm from South Africa. I'm here to help create and join sustainable eco-villages in order to help people learn the ways of how to self-sustain themselves.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Chapter Violet is the chapter we're on. So we've gone through infrared, red, orange, blue, green, indigo, and now we are at violet, which is, to me, the penultimate chapter. And ultimately, this is where we bring it all together. We have been talking about all different aspects of this transition right the way through, but it's not the way I actually experienced this whole journey. I experienced it as aha moments and da-da-da, and eventually I get to this point and I'm like, oh my gosh, we need a transition. And so that's the reason for me sticking to the concept of moving back to the garden as this particular chapter. Although we as participants on this journey have been going through these ideas a lot throughout the journey. My questions to you are, why transition? Anybody?
Sorry, what was the question?
Why transition?
Why transition? Why live in a concrete jungle when you can live connected with the land, be a part of something that is growing alive and perpetuates life? I do not understand why not.
Excellent. Kurt?
Well, I agree with that. It's not much of a choice, is it? We can continue to travel full speed ahead towards a brick wall. We can walk the path of life.
That's wonderful. Brennan?
Well, in my opinion, why waste all your money when you can live sustainably off the land, you know, and still keep producing what you need to survive by replanting and regrowing food forests and crops and all of that, but in a self-sustaining way where it won't poison the earth or the insect life or the animals around it.
Excellent. I love all of those answers. They were incredible. Yeah. Ultimately, I think the big thing is, because why transition is because our survival depends upon it. Help Save Our World is more about helping save our world from ourselves. And, for ourselves, from ourselves, because humans, somewhere along the way, we lost this realization that we are nature and we're part of it. What are we transitioning from, and where are we transitioning to? That's a question for you. Anyone?
I think we are
Okay.
trying to transition from basically the way of living in which we are living now, which is basically destruction, self-greed, and practically lost, to transition into a way of loving, self-sustaining, nurturing way of life.
Excellent, Brennan. Alex?
As I said, from the concrete jungles back to nature.
Yeah. And Kurt?
Yeah, I think we're transitioning from the domination resource, everything is a resource mentality, into we are part of the entire structure, and we have no more right to dictate the end as any other creature on the planet. We get to live in relationship with nature, not domination of it.
Wow, I love those answers. All right, so ultimately, I think it was Bill Mollison from Permaculture said the world's problems can be solved in a garden. So ultimately, our sustainability sort of begins with us and progresses out as we create these levels of sustainability around us. So to the garden and eventually into sustainable teaching eco-villages is what the aim of our sort of, or what we have come to an agreement is the ultimate situation to live in. So what are we transitioning to? We're transitioning from our current way of life back to the garden, back to the land. Why such an extreme step? Because it is who we have evolved to be within this ecological environment in which we live, which we call Mother Earth. Either we live in love, balance, and harmony with our environment, Mother Earth, or we do not survive. It's very, very simple. We just have to go with the flow of life and nature, or it's over. We've been moving far away from that and creating all sorts of problems. Like, to survive, we have to move from irresponsible to responsible living, from unsustainable to the sustainable way of living, from imbalances to balance, from inequality to an equitable world, from cities to the land, cross the bridge, from over there to here with me. We've got to move from being in a state of fear to being in a state of love. Fear of the ignorance and blindness of others, like the ignorance of patriotism, which divides us, and the ignorance of racism, to a state of oneness, wholeness, togetherness, and equality. We've got to move from the ignorant adult mind to the child's mind within. When we're children, we love and play and enjoy the company of others. We share and care because that's what our parents teach us. We've got to move away from destroying relationships to regrowing relationships with one another, from male dominance, taking, force, violence, destruction, wars, to a feminine, loving, sowing the seeds, nurturing, growing, and an abundant way of life. We've got to move from blind belief to thinking, questioning, and changing. We've got to move from taking to a giving and receiving world. And in that way, creating balances by only taking what we need and constantly giving back. We're going to move from segregation to, or segregation or division to that togetherness. We've got to move from individualism to collective ecosystems and relationships. We've got to move from competition against one another to cooperation with one another. We've got to move from being stuck, making the same mistakes again and again and again, to adapting, changing, moving towards the truth and natural wisdom to create a better future. We've got to move from ignorance to knowledge, thought, creativity, awakening, awareness, consciousness, and natural wisdom. We've got to move from oversimplification to seeing the complexity, from black and white to nuance, variance of shades and colors and intensities of colors, and everything beyond that, beyond our visual spectrum. And that's a metaphor for how we must live in the world with an openness to being creative and able to adapt and change and see the nuances in nature and flow with them. Individualism to the whole, complex connected relationships, ecosystems. Selfishness to communal living. Segregation to we are all in this together. Monocultures to biodiverse ecosystems. Biodiversity in its complexity adds to our survival ability and sustainability. So anyone have an idea of the definition of sustainability? Nobody want to give it a shot?
Well, I think this group should be able to come up with a couple.
With something.
Yeah. So I say sustainability infers that whatever we do, and I'll just speak to with the land. It's that it does not deplete the land, but we take into account that we need to maintain the quality of nutrients and soil and water, so that we're not having to destroy little plots at a time and leaving a barren waste behind us. So we were able to regenerate and leave nothing but footprints.
I like that. I like that. Alex, anyone?
Oh, I like that too. I think it's about being in balance and harmony with the land, and taking only what we need and giving back what we don't, and rescattering the seeds as we go. It's being one with the land and not taking more than what we need.
But why would we do that? That's the question. So
to grow, reestablish, to continue life.
there you go. I think that's it. It's if we don't do what you're saying, there is no life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's brilliant. Okay, so from the definitions that I read up on, and I didn't get into too many of them, sustainability is the ability to exist continuously within the natural balances of the biosphere. And I add that biosphere being the womb of Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Achieving sustainability or sustainable living will enable the earth to continue to support life. It's another one of theirs. So I just want to go over there. There are diagrams on the internet of the pillars of sustainability. So I'm going to quickly share screen with you. The sustainability pillars. Now, permaculture is like, what it means is permanent agriculture, but it also means permanent culture. So sustainability pillars of permaculture are central to what permaculture are these three basic ethics. And the ethics are care for earth, earth care, people care, and fair share. And this comes from the foundation for permaculture design. And it's like really, really important to think about this. It's like, if you don't care for the earth, we don't live. But if people are not cared for and integrated into living systems, then there will be a problem. It will not be a sustainable system. And then, of course, fair share, it's like that concept of only take what you need and constantly give back. So it really is these three core principles within permaculture, which are like the foundation. But our philosophy, we take it much further than that. But here is Bill Mollison had another guy who was working with him, and he came up with these incredible diagrams, and I cannot think of his name right now, but I'll tell you later. But he's got this symbol for the earth, all right? And it's earth care, fair share, and people care. And I love the little hearts thing, so it's beautiful. He came up with some really beautiful graphics to explain the philosophy behind permaculture. And it's really worth going to check out. So then, of course, we have a lot of sustainability concepts on the internet that are telling the similar story, but they tend to move more towards trying to sustain the economic model that exists in our world. But social, that's people. And an environment, that's nature, that's ecology. And then economics, that's energy. You know, it's really, if it's not economically sustainable, I mean, if we don't have like enough money to acquire the land and to get the seeds and the tools that we need, if it's not viable and not sustainable and not reasonable to do, then it's not sustainable. So that's really an important one. And here's social is about people, environment is about the planet, and economics is about profits. You know, if you don't make more than you put in, you can't fund everything else. So I don't like the idea of the word profit in terms of money that you can run away with. But if it's profits that are reintroduced into the ecosystem, then I would say it's sustainable. So environment and economics, is it viable? You know, will we have enough money to make sure we get it up off the ground and happening, and will we create the future we're looking for? Is it equitable? In other words, is it fair? You know, that's really, really important, because otherwise people won't want to do it. It's like they go into Ethiopia and they John D. Liu, and he goes in there and he explains it to the government, and the government says to the people, you know, to rehabilitate this land, all you have to do is like do all this work and it'll be like a healthy and happy place for you. And the people are, yeah, no, how do we benefit from this? Basically, everything you produce is yours. So you have like indefinite access to the land. It's your land, basically. And whatever comes from it is yours. Then it's equitable. All right. And then they do it. And they create this incredible rejuvenation of areas in Ethiopia. So, and is it acceptable? Are you going to like enslave everyone and take them out onto the land and make them do everything so a rich man can get richer? No, it's not acceptable. It's only acceptable if it recreates a rehabilitated environment and a happy, healthy group of people. So Here's another one. Now we're moving more and more towards this concept of sustainability. I actually left out the ones that get too extreme. So society, the standard of living, education. I wouldn't think of the education system that exists, but I would think of the education that we're wanting to create. I wouldn't think of jobs. I would think of jobs means like you're working for somebody else. I would think of it as the choice to work the land, equal opportunity. Like, does everyone have an equal opportunity to create a sustainable life? Social, environmental, conservation policies. This is like very much more of an observer's like, oh, we're going to conserve the land and we're going to have environmental justice. It's really important. And then global stewardship. But it's like, it's as if everyone in this way of thinking is outside of the whole situation and they are pointing fingers and deciding what everyone else will do, as opposed to getting their hands in the dirt and doing something. Environment. Natural resource use. I mean, we have an epidemic of absolute plundering on our planet. So we really have to conserve and only use what is absolutely necessary and continue to create renewable resources. So pollution prevention, of course, we've got to move away from the pollution and we've got to create biodiversity, which is important. Economics growth, I would prefer to think of reinvestment growth in nature as opposed to economic growth and profits for the rich. Cost savings gives me this terrible feeling of you've enslaved the masses and you're trying to get the maximum yields and profits out of them. And then research and development. If we're using research and development to create better ways of living naturally, I'm for it, but research and development at a cost to the environment could be very destructive. So there's balances there that are important. Environmental, economic, energy efficiency. It's like, don't waste water, don't leave your electric lights on. Use renewable fuels. Like this gives me the concept, the idea of biomass and all that, and or burning wood and that sort of thing in fires. And so using things like solar panels and that sort of thing. So subsidies and incentives. It would be really nice if governments and philanthropists would share their wealth to create the gardens and the eco-villages and so on into the future. Green technologies, of course, that's things like solar panels and wind generators and so on. Ways of ensuring that we aren't creating more global warming. And this starts to get just too far off the way I like to think. It's getting very much into the way of thinking that our world is so stuck in at the moment. We go through those diagrams, and I believe sustainability is not possible without the process of learning and living what we have learned in this course. So for me, the pillars are way more than that. You've got to know who you are, what you are, where you come from, your place in the ecosystems of Mother Earth, sort of the purpose and the reason for life. You've got to be part of planting the seeds, nurturing and growing the future, living by the truth, the natural wisdom of nature, in love, balance, and harmony with the flow of nature. To do this, we need to have the knowledge, skills, the wisdom we are teaching in this course. You have to have a vision of the future and a mission and a purpose and the ethics and the moral code of conduct and a desire to create that better future. We do this by spreading these teachings of thinking and questioning and seeking the truth and the trends, to be able to predict and foresee the future if we don't change. Seeing the past and projecting it into the future, we can see where we went wrong and we can find the alternatives. Observing and being one with nature, we can gain perspectives of what is possible within the natural environment. Thus, we begin seeing and learning the truth and the natural wisdom of nature and the universe. Things like connectivity, wholeness, movement, vibrations, vibrations, energy, cause and effect, the cyclical nature of reality, giving and receiving, relationships, the nature of sustainable ecosystems. Then we begin choosing and changing and living in love, balance, and harmony in happy, healthy, and sustainable relationships with all life and our world. We're constantly focusing on reevaluating and rethinking and questioning to find the truth so we can awaken and become more aware and conscious and wise. Having traveled this long journey, these thought journeys, we become more wise and transform our lives. Thus, we become able to make wise choices, changing with positive, constructive, growth-based actions, using our energy in beneficial ways to help serve others and our ecosystems. We become dedicated to spreading the seeds of thought and the physical seeds to grow abundance, biodiversity, spreading the ethics, the values and beliefs, the moral code of conduct of a sustainable future, like caring and sharing and mutual respect and empathy and consideration. We create sustainable permanence so humans never make the same mistakes again. If we carry on caught up in this cycle of generation destruction, we cannot sustain that. We literally are taking the resources of the planet, growing these cities and civilizations, and then we're destroying them, and we then plunder the earth some more. There is an end to that. The earth has limitations. So anyone want to talk about the limitations to sustainability? Kurt? I love the birds in the background.
You can hear them? Yeah, with my earplugs I can't, but I'm glad you can. The limitations of sustainability. Not sharing the bird sounds. That would be one. And I think that might be one of the main drivers, is that the hoarding, the greed, the domination of resources or availability is probably one of the biggest impediments. We've gotten into this scarcity mentality in civilization where we need to accumulate in order to feel that we've been successful. And I think that mentality definitely needs to be changed across the globe in order for sustainability to have any viability, versus the same old, let's scramble in the rat race to grab what we can. And he with the most unused resources wins. So it's not that. He who shares the resources wins, and we who share the resources win.
Yeah, it's an absolute, really it comes down to that is the fundamental principle on which our society is based, is winner takes all. Like, just go and plunder, and he who can take the most is successful. And that is such a messed up idea.
Yeah. So I'd say that's probably the major impediment that I personally see. And I think that's why this group exists, is to acknowledge that it does, and we help change the world by changing that conversation person by person.
Yeah, absolutely. A re-education is fundamentally what needs to happen to reconnect people, so that there is no greed, that there is a general understanding of togetherness or oneness and equalness. A love-based society needs to be created through education to be able to perpetuate sustainability.
I agree. I just got to read something to you. I was looking at a post by, let me just look at the top here. It says Future Learn. And it's basically the University of Nottingham, who sort of puts this under Creative Commons license. So I feel I do have the ability to read it because I'm not making any money out of this. So in 2000, so first of all, they look at the population growth and the exponential rate of population growth, and that basically the population growth in third world countries or in undeveloped countries, the population growth is much higher than in developed countries, but the pollution and the destruction and the consumption is much higher in developed countries. So like America might think that they've got it all under control, but they literally, through the rate of consumption and pollution, they are actually destroying the environment far faster than any third world country would. So it's really interesting concepts. But in 2006, a team of scholars with the United Nations Universities World Institute for Development Economics Research published the first paper, which was to tally for the entire world all of the major elements of household wealth, everything from financial assets and debts to land to homes and other tangible property. This research, based on the year 2000's data, found that the richest 1% of the world's adult population, individuals worth 514,512, I don't know what it is, this is not very well presented here, who hold 29.4% of the world's wealth. So that's like nearly 30% of the world's wealth is owned by 1%. Right? Personal wealth is distributed so unevenly across the world that the richest 2% of adults own more than 50% of the world's assets, while the poorest half only 1% of wealth. The US consumes 25% of the world's energy, with a share of the world's population of only 4.5%. The figures for material, water, and food consumption between the richest nations and the poorest display a similar level of disparity. Now, it's like mind-blowing to think of that. This whole idea of capitalism and consumption and free trade and all these things has just resulted in this incredible imbalance. Now, what sustainability requires is that we bring that balance back into our world, because imbalance is, as we know, it's an unnatural principle. Anyone want to talk about that?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Dennis. Obviously the whole greed factor and the domination accumulation mentality causes that. It's a zero-sum game, I would guess, as far as if I take, you lose. That's just the way materials are. I'm going to take it just a little bit off of that, because what I see, especially in the imbalance, is the lack of comfort for some people and the over-the-top comfort of others who have. And we've become, at least, well, I'll speak for you because I'm part of the civilization. We've become so comfortable with stuff and things and accumulation that we no longer want to work. And that obviously, maybe not obviously, but it disconnects us from our connection with nature and actually living and producing the things that we personally need to produce. And you can see it with poverty. Anybody living in poverty, whatever level that means to you, has to work a lot harder for their survival. because there are fewer resources for them to use to create it. There are fewer funds. There's lack of sharing. Again, the whole equity aspect of it. So I can speak for in America, but probably in most of the first world countries, comfort has been what we've been moving towards, away from producing our own food, even away from reading books. We can get it from the TV, and we don't work for very much anymore. And work does not have to be a dirty word. I think many people think that it is. And, how to be a millionaire and earn while you sleep. That's the past 15 years of use of the internet. Not to denigrate how people make money, but what they do with it and the life that they look at always has to do with material comfort. And what we don't see is, and I think the current trend the past 20 or 30 years has been towards how can we create comfort spiritually, mentally, emotionally. That's where our comfort needs to be. And as you can really tell, that doesn't exist in too many places around the world. People are suffering deeply for the circumstances of their life. And they don't have any of the inner skills and abilities to overcome that, to find a better way, to think positively. And maybe we can even take it to sustainability of the mind. How can you get through every day and not have just, raked over everything in your life to survive another day? It doesn't have to be that way. And I think there's a distinction between comfort and ease. And that when things are easy, one tends to be in the flow, right? I'm able to work with this because I have the context to come from that says, yes, I can. And I think the world is so deep into no, you can't. Again, that's part of the separation and domination aspect of it. So I know that was kind of rambling. So whatever your question was, did I answer it? I don't remember.
It's very, very, very good. It's like Brendan has this garden services business, and we were out, he was cutting and I was, leaf blowing and sweeping, raking and so on. And the physical health benefits of being out in the sunlight, moving, exercising, the psychological benefits like the ability to sleep through the night and your body to get fitter and healthier are just undervalued. It really is amazing to be planting plants and to be out there. Alex,
yeah.
So would you like to continue?
I won't continue because I fully agree with everything stated here. The only thing I will say is that I'm just absolutely horrified with those numbers. I suspected as much, but actually hearing the numbers is quite a shocker.
It's scary, Hey? Wow. So let me just carry on with the limitations of sustainability. You might have heard of tipping points or points of no return, where once we've gone there, it's over. It's like we've chopped down all the trees on Easter Island and there are no more trees. We cannot live there anymore and we all die. Or we're in living as the Vikings on wherever way up north, and we've now chopped down all the trees and we built ships to go and plunder the world. But our ecology of our land is now impossible to sustain life. We've just done ourselves in. So there are these tipping points. So like when the rates of consumption exceed the rates of growth or regeneration, when we consume or take everything, use it until there's nothing left, when you destroy the natural cleansing and replenishment systems like the hydrological cycle, it's like you chop down all the trees and now you don't get rainfall in that area, and of course it turns into a desert and that you die. Say, for example, like Egypt being this incredibly forested area, but a very fragile ecosystem. You chop down all the trees to build all these pyramids, and now all of a sudden you create this ecological collapse, and bam, you're done. The ocean temperatures and currents, their control and their cycles, because of the two frozen ice caps and the circulating currents and so on, you melt the ice caps, you destroy those cycles, bam, you've destroyed your ability to survive on the planet, because your temperatures become rapidly out of control and imbalanced, and you end up with extreme weather conditions. So the life cycles of all life in ecosystems. So it's really, really important to maintain the biodiversity and the complexity. The oxygen replenishment systems, you chop down all the trees, you kill all of the microorganisms, the plankton in the oceans, you have no air, you stop breathing, you're dead. The food replenishment systems, abundance in food forests and biodiversity and bees and all of the insects that do the pollinating. Desertification of the planet, you chop down all the trees, it turns into a desert. Then, of course, the winds blow and it rains, and of course, you lose all your topsoil. And then, of course, you can't grow anything anymore. Then overfishing the oceans and destroying the nurseries of life, the swamplands, that now we have sugarcane growing in these wetlands, which are nurseries. It should not be like that. They need to get those people out of those swamplands and let them regenerate life. We've got to stop fishing in with coral reefs and all that. It just needs to be like, no, this is like the key area that provides the complexity and the multiplication of life. So we need to set aside sustainable things. All these and many more aspects of our ecosystems ensure that life goes on. We either become part of the ecosystems again and be a contribution to them, or we cease to exist. It's simple. We are energy beings that require that we maintain and balance our energy levels. The balances of nature, the biodiversity leads to survivability. This is why we have to return to the garden. My next question is, why is it necessary to transition? Can we keep on doing this indefinitely? Good.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty much that, yeah. Our current system is unsustainable because of its purpose, its vision, and the focus being unsustainable and destructive to our world that gives and sustains our lives. We are either part of the problem or we're part of the solution. You need to choose in a hurry before it's too late. And we passed or are passing the thresholds of no return at an accelerating rate. We have this one reprieve that we might be able to survive after chopping down certain areas or burning down certain areas of jungle or forest long enough because of other things that can sustain our lives, like importing food or whatever, while we regrow the forest and the ecosystem. But it'll take like a long time for it to regenerate. But it generally happens faster than we think. But we need to take on those tasks, like reclaiming desert regions and semi-desert regions and regrowing reforestation and all of these mammoth projects, which is really, that to me is like, it's something that is always in my mind. I was thinking of like earthworks, like creating this big earth moving equipment where you go in and you put in swales and you put in catchment dams, and in flat areas you create like divots and swales on contour, so that when it rains in these like very dry regions, you capture that water, it goes into the groundwater, and it creates maybe fragile, but it expands ecosystems, as opposed to having sandstorms taking over oases and villages and just expanding into cities and creating dust storms and so on. This progressive movement against the flow of what is happening to regenerate life and expand it. So that's one of my dreams, is to be able to go into deserts and with big equipment and so on, and lots of people, and put in gabions, which is like wire cages with rocks in them, to slow water flow off the land. It's like this dream that just goes over and over and over in my head, that's what I should be doing. I think we go on from here to a next section, but we're at 5:57. So anyone want to put in some final comments on this meeting? Alex?
I can't wait to be out on the land and planting and growing trees and just being there with people and digging hands in the soil. I mean, I do it on a regular basis here in my little garden, but having the sustainable eco villages to teach people and actually teach them how to connect with the land and teach sustainability on the land. I don't want to be in a desert and reclaiming deserts, but I want places where there's water, seeing as I'm such a water baby, and go there.
Excellent. Kurt?
Well, I agree with Alex. I thoroughly enjoy nature, and I've been fortunate in most of my life to be either in it or have access to it. I've also lived in New York City, but I had 100, maybe 100 square feet of a backyard while I was in New York City, so I was able to access it there. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, the more and more that resources are accumulated into one spot, it will be easier for those that have that power and control to manipulate the not-haves. I'm kind of reminded of the image of the Matrix, where you have these rows and rows and rows that go on forever of people plugged in. Their life is basically about, let's pump in dreams and whatever, and let's take out your body energy to feed the system again. And I don't see that as where humanity gets to go. I know that's a prevailing thought about the singularity and people becoming hybrids and all that kind of stuff. It's one way we can. I think it's a false image and vision that again feeds into those that have to manipulate the rest of us. So as we are stewards, I guess, of the little plot of nature that we live in personally, and then as part of a community or a nation or civilization, we still and continually get to go back to nature and be in nature, not as a hybrid, some other man-made, cockeyed idea that in order to survive, we need to give up who we are for who they want us to be.
Sorry, I got dumped off the internet when you said, I agree with what Alex was saying, and then boom, I was gone. But and then it sounds like you had this incredible input there, and then I just got the end part of it. So
okay, well, I can't quite repeat it, but you can listen to it, I guess, in the recording. Okay. The main point of it is that we continue to shift the direction of humankind back to the earth, not back to technology.
Yeah,
or not forward to technology.
That's the point, is like we believe that gods are going to save us, or technologies are going to save us, or civilization is going to save us. And none of that is true. It's like literally the garden will save us. And so it's like really, really important to know and to see that. The other thing is, it was really interesting in that write-up that I was reading to you, how they say, okay, there is an ecologist perspective, and that is that we are one with, we aren't separate, we are part of the ecosystems, we're part of nature. Then there was the, I think they called it the environmentalists. Okay, so the environmentalists have this perspective that they are like looking out at what's going on in nature, and they are the stewards of, and like they will guide and whatever things to happen in a certain way. And it really is, it's like detachment from nature. And then they take the economist, which is like, the natural economics will sort out, everything will sort itself out economically, because that's what happens, supply and demand and whatever, it'll sort itself out. And that is really like a abdication of responsibility. It's like, I'll just keep on doing as I please, and I'm not responsible because it should sort itself out, really. So it's like these three world views. And of course, although I talk about having perspective of everything, it's not an objective, just an objective perspective. It's an intimate relationship perspective. So it's not this like I'm outside and I'm not part of it. It really is about being an integral part of Mother Nature, and because that's who we are. We are the water, we are the air, we are the land. It's like, how do you come up with the idea that we're not part of it? And if you do have that idea, stop drinking, stop eating, stop pooping, stop being a human being.
Hey, Dennis,
anything you want to say?
Dennis, do your wrap up what you just started to do when you dropped out. I think that would be a good cap to the day. I just wanted to hear what you were.
Oh, what I said about. Basically, there's the ecologist perspective, and the ecologist perspective is we are nature, we are part of the environment, we are part of this incredible ecosystem, and that's life. And then there was the perspective of the environmentalist, which is more of a we are observing, and we will manage and control and be the stewards of nature. It's like a disconnect, all right? And then the third one was the economist, and the economist's perspective was the markets and everything will naturally sort themselves out. So supply and demand and so on. And so it's really, to me, that's an abdication of responsibility for what is happening in the world, and just like leaving it up to, we'll continue business as usual, and when it ends, it ends. It's like, really. Then my concept was like, if this is the way you want to think about the world, then no more water for you, no more food for you. Stop eating, stop doing all those things that humans do, because you're taking from the ecosystem or the environment that keeps you alive. And then let's see how it changes your approach to the world and to the survivability of the world. So it's really important that people have this intimate relationship with how important this is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I just wanted to mention before we leave, in some of the pre-work for this session, in our conversations or texts, we had spoken a little bit about application, and this journey we've been on has been a very great and broad and detailed learning and knowledge journey. And obviously we are not doing this just to talk Sundays for a year and change. We're doing it so that we start to apply this knowledge and take it into our own gardens and our neighborhood, and expand it as best we can, so that the application of this will have the change occur. Conversations are good, but until they are put, until the points of the conversation are put into action and actually applied, we're not really changing very much. So it's the conversations are the seed that can help change the world by our individual and group efforts and application of the concepts. So we've covered a lot over the past 57 weeks, I think it was. So there's a lot of great information here. It's put in practice whatever little piece you can. I'm speaking generally for anybody that might be watching this. Don't try to eat the elephant in one bite. Actually, don't eat the elephant. Eat something that's a big piece of fruit that you can't quite finish. Just nibble at it, take it in, get some energy from it, and have it continue to serve and nurture you as you turn around and then serve and nurture others in the planet.
I love that. That's brilliant. All right. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end. I'm going to end the recording. So bye, everyone. We can talk on a little bit afterwards. I've got some interesting stuff. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, Brendan. Bye, Alex. Bye, Kurt.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop the recording.